It's ThursdAGE. You know, amazingly enough, see, here's the thing. People just don't know all of the details about our talented staff. This is a track from Malcolm Sheppard's latest album called Xylophone My Xylophone. And I saw it live. It was just, it was breathtaking, Malcolm.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
No, thank
The
you.
secret is going along with your lie.
That is the secret. I'm glad that you've learned it. It might have taken a couple years, but no.
I mean,
this
if
is
we
just
both keep our stories straight, there's no one to contradict us. You see.
absolutely right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's all about the now. It's all about this moment, and in this moment on this ThursdAGE, I do have to say, and chat, I know that you will agree with me. Yeah, he's gonna provide. He's gonna perform it today. Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us. I got all choked up because look how handsome Malcolm is. What a handsome dude. Look, Duke's here. Hello, Duke. The ultimate Gabriel is here. Like the penultimate Gabriel. Jonesy says, "Hey, team." Brian says, "Good
Shouldn't we start with the
evening."
median Gabriel and work our way up?
No, we're you know it really
A
hasn't
bit
been
of
that long
pressure.
since you've been on, but we've really moved the needle.
Okay.
RC, can I say to you, my friend, a good ThursdAGE unto you and yours. Do you smell that smell? It's like something fresh out the box is in chat. Blue Nova's here. Hello.
There's Jahan. There's Rain.
Jose, good to see you as well. So I don't know why we're waiting because, when you've got a handsome picture, you know what's better? A handsome face. Hello, my friend.
Hello.
Good to see you. I'm going to go ahead and just slowly phase out this music because it's slowly killing me. Smells like Team Spirit. Jahan, good to be heard. See, so handsome. I see it right there. And here's one thing I know: chat does not lie. Oh my gosh! Blue Nova says hello from the future. It's currently 11:05 a.m. Friday morning. Blue Nova, thank you for joining us back here in the past. It is good to know that you're still around. Excuse me, because that means we will be too. Turtle, first time coming in, to be honest, forgot I backed this until a player was telling me how much they want me to run a Mythos-based game, says Turtle. Hey, my friend Turtle, you now have overtaken everybody for my favorite username. It's just fun to say the way you spelt it is Turtle.
Well, Turtle, there have been some updates. We've done some game stuff. I think it's going to work out okay.
Nice.
We'll just see how she goes.
Yeah, what
Now,
can you
that was
do?
full
But
Canadian. I'll pull it back a bit.
no, Malcolm, we demand full Canadian. Like, get out your bags of milk.
Oh, what are you on about, son? No, that's more East.
Well, so let's do this real quick. So you wear many a hat, or okay, wait. Do you wear just one really big hat?
I wear this hat.
Yeah,
because
a toque, if you will.
I haven't gotten a haircut recently.
Fair
I like
enough.
to get my haircut at this place in Toronto. It's this barbershop that's about 100 years old, and they're really nice, and they do a great job on what's left of my hair. But this is supposed to be about the game stuff, isn't it?
Well, I'm actually imagining you've got a little Cthulhu Awakening under that hat.
A little Cthulhu Awakening. Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Yeah.
Well, it's one of the things. I don't know. Some of you out there might be fitting up top, and since there's less weight of hair to hold it down, you just start to get this epic bedhead. if you let your hair grow out. So I've been indulging in a lot of 90s anime characters facing into the wind kind of looks. But
Nice. I like it.
but yeah, well, people keep talking about this game. Oh, news, Cthulhu news, snooze. Right. So,
Cthulhu
um,
news. Well, yeah.
yeah. Well, we did
Well,
write the
hold on.
game a
Let me
while
let me
ago.
let me pause you because we want to milk this moment like a bag of Canadian milk.
Hmm.
Um, you do the bank milk, right?
Um, you know what? The funny thing is, I actually don't like the bagged milk that much.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I'm a wax cardboard carton guy.
Okay, fair enough, fair enough. Okay, well, that wasn't what I was going to say. What I was going to say is, so Malcolm Sheppard, you are the your modern age developer.
Hmm.
You run the line, and with that comes a great library of things. Now, Cthulhu Awakens, a
Mhm.
separate property, a separate age
That's
adventure game
that's right.
engine. Yeah.
Yeah, it started out as a modern age supplement, but then the more we did some brainstorming, and Owen Casey Stevens, previous ThursdAGE stalwart,
Yep.
um,
Yep.
he was
Legendary.
actually the one who suggested that it just gets spun off into its own game, right? So once we were able to do that, it just made a lot of things much easier. Um, it meant that we could go in and really tune the rules, and that is, includes features like, well, in the genre we have, you know, obsessed specialist characters a lot of the time. So that's why we have 5 tier specializations to let people lean into that conceptually. And we have our talents and focuses curated for that, and of course we have the new systems like the eldritch workings and the particular way we do psychic powers, and so on and so forth.
So
So
you say particular way.
yeah, well, one of the things, for example, in if you have modern age, we basically have a generic point based power system, right, where you spend the points and you make your roll to do a thing, right?
Yeah.
So you throw a bolt of flame or melt somebody's brain or whatever, right? So
Right.
in Awakens, I wanted a more mythosy kind of feeling. So if some of you will know that in modern age there is an option for powers, that instead of using powerpoints, what we do is we make a roll to avoid fatigue instead, right? And that is something that became kind of the default in the threefold setting for psychic powers in particular. So what
Okay.
I did is I took that basic thing, except that instead of you just getting more tired, um, you know, you make what's called a power test to see if your power goes off, and a price test to see what the negative consequences of it might be, right? And they have a mythos flavor, right? You might fail a price test and gaze out into the void and gain a terrible supernatural insight, which isn't great for your psychic health, but it might give you some bond points, for example, that you can use when you're interacting with mythos creatures, right? And that dovetails into the alienation system, because the alienation system is a series of bonds. And those of you who've been following along will know that the rules for relationships that you see in Blue Rose and in Modern Age are kind of the conceptual basis for a lot of the bond and mechanic stuff we're doing in newer age things. So, those of you who have gotten Trojan War, for example, will know that we use divine bonds in there. So we used a form of the relationship mechanic to measure whether or not the Greek gods like you, right? And that was for Trojan War. So for this, what we have instead is in the alienation system, which is sort of how you lose your grasp on consensus reality
Okay.
with exposure to the mythos. in Cthulhu Awakens. It's sort of a double-edged sword in that you get a bond that you can convert into stun points for special insights about the mythos. Like you learn something from your experience and from how your mind has been changed by exposure to the mythos. But there also are what we call you also develop what we call an external bond in Cthulhu Awakens. An external bond is a bond that basically the GM can use against you, right?
Okay.
Under certain circumstances. So the GM might trigger an external bond, to make your character scared or mislead them because they're not thinking straight, or a bunch of other difficult things. Or it could just make a mythos creature tougher to escape from, to represent the fact that your increased connection to the mythos is kind of entrancing when you actually run into the monsters, right? So it's a whole lot to describe, but
But
the
I'm following, and I also want to make sure that chat is as
yeah,
well, and make
yeah.
sure that folks, if you got questions, now is the time. And
Now's the time
Steve
because
Sharp
I'll
says,
just keep talking.
"Oh yeah, yeah, we love that. We love that about
So
you." So, super neat mythos external bond. Um, Also, Steven says, "Someone keep Malcolm on track." Listen, listen.
yeah, well,
Hello from Montreal. Hey, isn't Montreal in your neck of the
well, it
in your
depends on
neck
who
of
you
the
ask.
Okay, fair, fair, fair. Yeah, there's maybe
I'm
a
one
little touch of
province
rank.
over.
One
But,
province over.
yeah,
Okay. Phenomenal. Okay, so we've
yeah.
set the stage a bit. Now, one of the things that I wanted to be sure to do, because I know this about you, in addition to being a joy to work with, you are just, when it comes to sort of speaking to your bona fides, the things that you do and the things that you have made and all of that, you let your work speak for itself, which is tremendous. It is, you are one of the most talented TTRPG people in on the scene. And I say that without any hyperbole. Um, my let's give folks just a real quick glimpse of some of the mayhem that you've brought, that you've wrought on the TTRPG age community, like for instance, the Cyberpunk Slice.
Oh yes, Cyberpunk Slice. Um, yeah, that seems to be doing pretty well, eh? Like that was something that I resisted doing because the trouble with the cyberpunk genre is that it has so much momentum, but at the same time there are some, you know, there are some definite market leaders, right? And because the genre is so just it's so filled with different motifs and particular little bits that everybody recognizes, right?
Yeah,
Like the street samurai stuff and having a metal arm and all of that stuff. Um, the challenge becomes like, how do you find something distinctive to say in that space, right? So, for example, a lot of people have been going, "Oh, love to see an age cyberpunk fantasy setting," um, and the trouble with that is that, well, I mean, I'm not going to beat around the bush. Shadowrun exists.
yeah,
It was an
right.
extremely dominant cyberpunk fantasy setting, so I don't want to make a clone of the fine game of Shadowrun because what's the point of that creatively? Um, and why fight the leader, right? When we can find another approach to it, which I actually did last week. I figured out a way for us to do a distinctive cyberpunk fantasy thing. And I made this is something maybe interesting behind the scenes thing. So
Yeah, yeah.
when we are making a book or thinking about a book, usually the process here is that sometimes there will be a specific period of the year where we all throw pitches together. But sometimes people will develop them throughout the year or when there is a need. So in this case, I did this pitch because we're talking about doing more support for Cyberpunk Slice, but we're not exactly sure what direction to take it. And so I worked on this particular thing, and then the fantasy angle occurred to me. So I did that as its own pitch and didn't solve the original problem of support for Cyberpunk Slice, but instead, planned out like, oh, we'll make this big thing that is only kind of related to what I was thinking, and so on and so forth. So, and then what happens is the developers talk about that for a bit, along with Chris Promise, who is the developer's developer, kind of the creative
Yeah.
company, and then after we sort of think about it for a bit, then it gets talked about with the company at large, and we might go through several drafts of this initial pitch document, which doesn't really have a specific format. Like, it's got to be like, it's a couple of pages, so it's not too hard to read. I tend to
Right.
overdo mine. And then it grows the more that we iterate it back and forth. And then eventually, whoever owns that pitch, if it's decided that it is a good idea to turn it into an actual book, they will eventually expand the pitch or use the pitch as the basis for a full proper outline, right? And the outline, in my case, will usually have the design document embedded in it. But sometimes there will be a separate design document, and the design document is, we use these dice and we use this kind of advancement, and here's what the system basically looks like. It's as much as of the system as you can fit on a couple of pages, to so that the writers can expand it. And then that final thing is what we kind of bring into making a book, and that's kind of how Cthulhu Awakens came into being.
I like
And
that.
that's how Threefold came into being. Threefold went for modern age, that setting. It went through a few iterations. And now that I've said that, I will talk about some exceptions, because
Okay.
sometimes we have a couple of things where it just suddenly becomes a good idea to make
Yeah.
this thing, right?
Now, when you
So,
say we, you mean you. I mean, 'cause you do this quite a bit. It's a thing I love about it. I mean, it's just it reminds me like of that brilliant series that you were the mashups.
well, yeah. Well, the thing is that because I'm always working with freelancers, right? It's collaborative, and because I'm in contact with the other creative folks,
Right.
um, there's that collaboration. For Cthulhu Awakens in particular, we had, a cool writing team, and in many ways, while I would do some pretty extensive editing here and there, the goal was always to get the coolest things that were contributed by the writers, to give those things the best possible polish and make them as prominent as possible. So,
Right.
for example, in chapter, hold on, let me just, excuse me for pausing for a bit to just look
No
something
worries.
up.
Yeah, no worries. While we're
Um,
doing that, we do have. Actually, what we have, Malcolm, and I think you know this, but I'm gonna tell you like you don't know. We have never before seen art,
yes,
so
well,
I'm excited to
some of
share
it's never
that.
before seen. We have previewed some before, but
Well,
yes.
we've seen it. We haven't shown our friends in the chat.
um, yes. So hold on, I want to answer. Should I answer Steve's question? I like literally
Uh,
see that guy on Sundays.
you
I'm not going
know,
to answer your
one of the
question, Steve.
one of the
I'll
things
just
that's
tell you
great
when
is
I
when
see
we're
him.
doing when we're doing these things, people can ask great questions that everyone can hear. They don't have to
Oh,
travel
darn it. All right.
all the
Well,
way to
what types of
Canada.
modern age toolkits might we see in the future, like Cyberpunk Slice? Great question, Steve Sharp of Canada, who I'm sure I don't know. Well, I thought of a few things. I think the main thing I was thinking of, maybe Apocalypse Slice, because it has a cool name, and also because that is a neat genre to do. I would also
Did you say
say like maybe
apocalypse light?
Apocalypse,
Ah, I
right?
see.
Because the post-apocalyptic genre, is, it's pretty big, and I don't know,
Oh, and
people
people
like
love it.
zombies. I'm not one of them, but
You're
folks
you're
do.
not a big fan of the
Yeah.
post-apocalyptic.
Yes. I am completely new to Age. How suitable different is Age for investigative games? All right, so the way investigations work in Age is we either have simple or detailed investigations, and basically, detailed and simple investigation is, you find the clue, you know what's going on. Okay.
Right.
Detailed investigations will have a tree uh, of different leads that unlock clues, right, or information. And to basically, those involve performing an action, having a focus, or sometimes a die roll. The idea is that we don't always want dice rolls to find information, right? And that is not like a super innovative thing. I would say that Gumshoe games are are the games that really made that point. So hats off to the folks at Pelgrane and Robin Laws.
Everyone
Um,
raise your toots.
yes, and but yeah, we have a couple of different options for how to run investigations, where we can have a tree of things, or you can just find it out, or there are options in between. Um, and that's laid out in the Cthulhu Awakens book, and it's basically the same as the system in Modern Age and the Expanse. If uh, if anybody's seen the investigative rules in those games. Time with the Last of Us show. Yeah, I still have to watch that. I've just been finishing up with. Oh, I'm not going to tell you my TV habits.
Oh,
Uh,
you're
I
did you
really
what
liked.
you
I really liked his Dark Materials, though. That was a great show. I don't even know the
Oh,
book, but the show
yeah.
was great. Yeah.
Yeah,
Um,
agreed. Sandman's good as well. I really
yes.
enjoyed that.
So I want to get back to what kind of the developer does, right? Um, so as I was saying, like my job is to polish the coolest things that I get, in draft form. So, for example, David Castro worked on the lion's share of the first chapter of Cthulhu
Yeah.
Awaken, and he brought in a lot of great ideas. And one of them was a detective agency that that exists in the modern day, and it's was such a great that is you know has a lot of connections to classic mythos stories, right? Because you have descendants of Lovecraftian characters
Yeah.
who run the agency, and it was such a great idea because it's sort of mentioned as an aside, but I'm thinking, this is a great group of people to like to give assignments or to run into as rivals or antagonists or all kinds of things. So, I added a bit of more content and I kind of made that more prominent in the text. Um, right. And similarly, there's a concept called the corridor in the setting, which is a way to get to alternate timelines and alternate points in history. Um, and the submissions for it were excellent, but I added an element where GMs could add more timelines because naturally it's such a interesting tool, and it fits what we do in the game, which is that of course we have the weird century setting, which is we have this 100-year period to play in. Right, it's not a 1930s or 20s period game,
Right.
and
Right.
it's not necessarily a modern game. No, it's not like the Dreamlands. It's distinct from the Dreamlands.
Paul Landry asking, so like the Dreamlands. But
Yeah,
so
but
one of
we
the
do
things I
have the
do love,
Dreamlands in there.
one of the things I love when we are when you and I get to hang out together is that you you do all the jobs. You are literally the a one man band. But I'm going to I'm going to encourage you to go deep into your most Malcolm Sheppardy place, and let me handle the chat for you. Only because I think that there are a million questions, and I'll tell you
Mm.
what, chat's pretty sneaky. Like they're going to try to throw. They're going to all at once. They're going to say, "Hey, are we going to keep Malcolm on track?" And then they're going to throw out all these amazing questions too. That's just the way they work. Insidious crew. But I wanted to ask you real quickly, what is the state of things right now as the project is evolving? Like what phase are we in right now of development?
Well, for the core book, we're in art approvals. Um, so the art's coming in, and it's either great or it needs some changes, and then either we use it or we get it changed. But it's all written, and I mean there are going to be a couple of little tweaks at the very end of the process because there always is. For example, I experimented with changing how the weapon reload rules worked in the draft, and then I realized I didn't like them, so I changed them back. And that was very late in the process, and that annoyed Al at his layout. But it still got done.
uh,
Um,
Here's a quick question. I'll throw it up on RCS. Will there be a way for folks who didn't back initially to buy the 1960s
oh,
adventure?
almost certainly. Excuse me for one second. I
Weird.
had to sneeze. My apologies.
Canadians sneeze silently. That's so polite.
But yes, no. As my understanding is that we're not doing anything that is Kickstarter exclusive. Um, we did have a special offer for the first issue of the Dreadcrawl zine that was included as an early backer reward, but it will still be purchasable.
Right. Yeah, we don't want people to miss out on stuff, but
Yeah.
but the
So
but the early backer um getting basically you fly to their home and you dress up as Cthulhu Awakening. So
yeah,
you
yeah.
kind of
Wow.
you kind of fake a little nap and then you wake up and you're like,
Well,
"Hello."
with the amount of jet lag, it won't take much dressing up. Um, but yes, so one of the things that I need to promotionally communicate better is that we're actually doing a number of things that weren't announced in the original Kickstarter.
Oh.
So one of those things is, for example, or at least we've announced it in some updates, but we didn't announce it in the original campaign. And one of those things is that we're actually doing 3 issues of Dread Crawls, at least. So um, issue 0 is going to be the one that is the backer award, but we're going to have 2 other issues, and the 3 of them together form a series of story and location generators that you can all use together in
Oh,
addition to
nice.
working separately, right? So it's kind of an old school RPG, random table kind of feel. Um, and it builds on some stuff that we worked on actually for Threefold. And I got the same gentleman who did that stuff for Threefold, Jesse Haynick, to work on the Dreadcrawl stuff. So that's coming out. So we're a total of 3 of those. If people remember Ian's Revelations of the Buckeye,
Mm-hmm.
which you yourself were involved in, Troy,
That's
I
right.
did yes, I did an adaptation of that based on Ian's notes. So that's going to be kind of like a almost an adventure, right? It's an adventure, but it's written a little in a little more of a streamlined, straightforward way, um, to kind of reflect its origins as an immediate GM utility, right? Although parts of it are going to be fleshed out and different from the adventure as it was originally run, because as many of you know, this one of the dirty secrets of GMing is that you take a lot of messy point form notes that don't necessarily make sense out of context, and
Right.
that's what Ian's notes were like. So they
Right, I
required
remember
a
that.
little.
Yeah. The other thing as well is because of the nature of this, of Cthulhu and Awakening, you're actually using
Yeah,
real flesh when you flesh it out as
it's
well, which is
true. It's
something we did.
true. It hurts.
Yeah, yeah.
Also, I guess another thing that hasn't been communicated super loudly is that the GM's kit is going to include this book that kind of all the company creatives sort of jammed together on. That is all eldritch texts and tomes and magical grimoires and things, right?
Yeah, yeah. Sorry, I'm laughing because
So,
John made me laugh.
you know,
You've got skin in the game.
if you remember our past Mutants and Masterminds developer, Crystal Fraser,
Yes.
a very cool woman. She did contributed a couple of things to that. One of them is 80s style Eldritch cabinet video game,
Oh, nice, nice.
and
Well, hey, I think we've got some art of someone taking a look at an early version of the GM kit.
mm,
Let's see. That's what I've been told, that's what's happening here.
oh yeah. Oh, I haven't seen that one finished before. That's a nice one.
That's nice. Yeah, really,
Yeah,
really nice. So
that is
this
our
too could be you.
signature. Our iconic character Sean,
I
and
forgot their name was Sean,
yes,
and I'm gonna tell you, in this particular version of the many metaverses, we are lousy with Sean's.
yes.
Sean's all day, all night. It's a plague over in
Well,
Mutants Masterminds,
it's like I have to actually be careful not to have too many art notes that feature Sean because they are so like they are the most kind of iconic looking iconic character we have, right?
right?
This like, extremely fancy bald non-binary socialite slash sorcerer. Um, so I try
So
to make sure that I split up some of the love among
out
the
to
other
the other.
iconics as well. So
So about Sean, a question. So
mhm.
is Sean, in my mind, I just get stuck on, sort of a Lex Luthery vibe or whatever, but that's not what's happening here, right?
So the way I do iconics is in like the iconics originally come from modern age, and they weren't really supposed to represent a setting as much as character niches and attitudes, right? So Sean
Okay.
was always the social oriented character. That was their niche. But when I was transferring some of these iconics to Cthulhu Awakens, giving Sean the social niche, it didn't work so well anymore because there are other aspects to the game that I wanted to highlight. And
Right.
so Sean became one of the example characters for weird eldritch research and occult stuff, right?
Okay.
And that builds on what Sean's job was in Threefold. Like Sean sort of was an exemplar of similar stuff in Threefold, so we kind of carried it forward from there.
Okay.
Right? But each of the iconics basically has a default thing that is their concern. Like Amy Wilson is generally the close range combat example character, right? So whenever you want to have somebody in hand to hand combat or a scene like that, Amy is kind of the go to, and the idea is to reflect some basic character niches, right?
Yeah.
So that the reader can imagine themselves playing someone like
I
these
see. So it kind
characters.
of creates sort of a framework for folks to kind of have
Yeah,
some reference.
and
Yeah.
it makes people's imaginations work because they kind of think of the possible stories that link all of the images if we keep the characters consistent, right?
Yeah.
Um,
Uh, Hey, I've got another piece of art that I want to. It is just very evocative. This is a pretty remarkable piece.
oh,
Whoa! Now, what is happening here? And I don't want to run into it.
Um, I think that's a mythos deity. I don't think I've seen it finished before.
Yeah, that's great.
Um,
So are we looking at one? I mean, one singular deity, or is this sort of a collection of
Singular.
like? Is singular? Ugh,
Yeah, we kind of we
intense.
the way we do the outsiders, which are what we call mythos gods, um, in the book, is we have a chapter where they're kind of laid out like a pantheon, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Along with images of them and what people in their cults do and all of that stuff, right? So
right. Stan says, yeah, as Jack Burton said, what in the world is that? Don't tell
yeah.
me. Karsh, yeah.
I
It does
tried to
look
get
sort of like
away. I tried to get away from having tentacles everywhere as just a shorthand for it's the mythos. There's a tentacle,
yeah. Okay, I like to hear that. No,
right?
yeah,
But you
yeah,
know what? There are tentacles, so sometimes you have to go with it. You know,
yeah,
and that has always been the thing with this game is that people have very strong opinions about what the mythos is like, and there's about a century of cultural and cultural and subcultural traditions about how things are supposed to look and what they're supposed to be like. And part of the challenge is cutting through all of the things that are not necessary, right? That have just sort of popped up by tradition, and so that we can see what's left and see how we can come up with our own distinct expressions of it instead of
yeah.
just leaning on the cliches all the time. Except that it's a constant struggle because the thing is with the artists and with the writers and with basically everybody is immersed in the nerd subculture that developed you know that developed the way we look at the mythos in pop culture now, right? So trying to stake out differences from that is sometimes a bit tricky. Is that making sense?
It does. It does indeed. And this is also a helpful sort of to, when you're looking to identify this, um, just use dukes when a god has a ma with a. I don't know how to say that and keep the tune.
O
Pharyngeal?
pharyngeal jaw, it's amore.
Samore, do 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 do. Now I want like pizza
Mm.
or squid or something. But oh my
Squid.
gosh, look at that! Is just
Yeah.
something else. Okay, that is and that is one thing I really do appreciate about having these conversations is that we get to. I mean, I have to imagine that as a creative, when you're drawn, called down a well-worn path, that it must just be instinctive for you to be like, okay, we're gonna retrope this trope or retread this trope or do something so that it's not the standard issue.
Well, I think there has to be a point to it, right?
Yeah,
Because people will complain about like fans being unreasonable and narrow-minded and things, and that is true for a certain set of fans. But here's the thing: you can never reach those fans, so it's just not worth trying. Um, However, you have the majority of reasonable fandom, and what they are looking for things they love, in my experience, is they are looking for a reason for your take or your approach, right?
yeah,
Um,
yeah,
and
yeah. They
that
want to know
reason,
the intention. Yeah,
and the reason isn't like you have to justify everything you do that's different, or you have to justify stepping into the space, or any of those things. It's just that they want um, they want some story logic. They want to know what you're thinking, and they want to know your process in taking that approach, right? And you have
especially
to.
tabletop RPG players because they want to blend or understand the
Mhm,
motivation behind the decisions because it helps inform.
yeah. Well, I mean, for example, the alienation system is not something that Like, I'll tell you right out, it doesn't exist to emulate Cthulhu mythos fiction in the literary sense, right?
Yeah.
The system is not designed so that at the end of the story, your character always loses their mind, and it turns out the whole session is a postscript from a sanitarium, right?
Right.
Even though
Right.
that story structure is perfectly valid, very popular, but we're working on a role playing game, a tabletop role playing game. And a tabletop role playing game means that we have to look at the specific pacing that tabletop RPGs often have. And
Yeah.
that means using a system that works with that, where, a character can change instead of over the course of one adventure, or one scenario, right? Which would be equivalent to a classic short story. We want something where, 10, this will work over a 10 level arc, right?
Yeah.
That, a 10 level arc, a year long campaign, all of that stuff, right? Um, but we'll still have session to session impact. And those are, the demands of the medium, and those are a little different than, the demands of non-interactive fiction. So
Yeah.
we a lot of our design is, and a lot of our changes and a lot of our approach has to do with using the mythos as a specific way to tell tabletop RPG stories instead of emulate literary or cinematic stories.
Well, so and I love that, and we'll want to unpack a bit more of this. I mean, every time we hang out, Malcolm, I think it would be really great to do a series of sort of like those masterclass kind of discussions for people who just want to kind of roll around in theory and in practice and really get a sense of you know I've talked to a lot of developers from video games to TTRPGs and even within our own organization and outside of it. And they're everyone has a unique approach. And I think just because they're unique people and they have their own matrix that they're kind of working with. But I truly enjoy getting a glimpse into how you do what you do, especially because I always watch you do it in the context of collaboration.
Mm.
You're already partnering with the whom you have built in your mind, and by I'm certain an amalgam of all the players you've met and all the games that you've played, and
Mm-hmm.
you know
Mm-hmm.
that's a fascinating bit of the business. But yeah, folks, in chat, would you come hang out with Malcolm? Just like we wouldn't do a big live stream, but more of like a I feel like I want to hear Malcolm just sort of unleashed and just kind of let him do his thing.
Oh
And
God.
I want to. I really do. Yeah,
God,
sausage
yeah.
making seminar. Yeah, absolutely.
Oh,
Um,
I will just talk people's heads off. It's happened before. It's the
yes,
reason
I
I
know.
often get invited to streaming shows once.
you know,
And it's not that they
I would.
dislike it, it's just that I take up a lot of their time. I will tell you one edge that I think I have as a designer
Yeah,
developer, and that is that I I do more playing than GMing these days, right? Now the classic
yeah,
thing for game designers, game developers is to always to be the forever GM, and like the vast majority of folks who kind of go into the trade, I think, are forever GMs. Um, and I was a forever GM, right? But as I started working and as I had some other commitments come up, I started letting other people do that work. And so, I'm currently on my second modern age campaign um, that I've played. Um, and both of them ran for about a year, right? And My friends run them. I don't run them. And yes, Steve in the chat is one of the GMs. The funny thing is that I designed Threefold, and did Modern Age, and Steve in the chat there ran a Threefold game, right? So I was the player in the setting that I designed. So the cool thing there is that I don't go, I don't talk people's ears off about what it was meant to be like, because that's not the way the reader's going to interact with it, right? And also, it doesn't matter if I'm the designer, the GM is still the GM. It's still their table, right?
Right,
That's
right.
how, that's the way to constructively organize these things. So what I get to see is I get to see how other people interpret elements of the setting. I get to see the mechanics that they like, the mechanics they have trouble with, how they interpret ambiguous words in the setting or the system, all of these things, in a way that I otherwise wouldn't get to really see. And I get to do it across time. I actually am in a fantasy cyberpunk game right now, and yeah, and I forget whether we started at first or third, but we're at eighth right now. So I'm actually exploring some of the stuff in Cyberpunk Slice right now, seeing it in other people, and also seeing like how some of the different convolutions of developing your character go, because I am playing this sort of miscellaneous sneaky sorcerer type dude. Um, and consequently, that's led to a lot of different insights that I have applied further along to newer things, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for answering that, Paul. And Malcolm, cover your eyes and ears. The reality is moments like these. This is this is Malcolm's work, and it's sort of like those moments of saying, "Hey, if anyone has a friend that's a massage therapist, it's like, you know, uh, hey, could you give me a back rub?" It's like the idea of being able to spend time with people who are immersed and have a real process. Not that other people don't, but really has a very thoughtful methodology. That kind of stuff is golden. It's treasure, and I feel like we do live in a and work in a space and play in a space where a lot of times talking about money and talking about that kind of stuff can be uncomfortable. Um, but I also feel like we live in a space where we really can recognize special moments and good work and opportunities to really learn from people who have elevated the craft. Um, so that to me is an interesting opportunity. Marinate on it, friends. I'm not saying that we would do that, but maybe we will. We'll call it an evening with Malcolm.
Mm.
Here's a question that I think it's as good a question as any, and it is the uh, can you use the modern age GM screen with some sticky notes with specific rules for Cthulhu Awakens? Like, are we looking
Kinda,
at something
kinda
that's
not.
kinda okay?
One of
What's
the
the kind of
differences
not
with
part?
Cthulhu Awakens is the equipment system is different, because we're doing 100 years. Um, Basically, instead of having a bunch of specific weapons, for example, we have weapon archetypes that if you want for a generic, so you have a generic gun, for example, you have a generic
Yeah,
handgun. And if you want it to be a specific model of handgun, there are different qualities that you can add to it, that will allow it to emulate guns from different periods, or you can use the basic gun. So that's very handy for Cthulhu Awakens, but it also means that the modern age weapons table doesn't necessarily work with it. However, however, there is nothing to keep you from using modern age weapons with Cthulhu Awakens either, because the systems are perfectly compatible with each other. So that's fine. Target numbers work the same. A lot of stuff works the same. So I would say like 50-50.
nice. Yeah, So enough that you are still within the DNA is there,
Oh
but
yeah,
you know,
basic. Yeah, I mean that's the thing with age games is it's actually like it's actively difficult to make them not work with each other, right? Like
sure, yeah, yeah,
you really have to do some weird stuff to make one age game not work with another. So a lot of the so a lot of the basic references are going to be the same. The core mechanics are the same, all that stuff is the same. There are some differences with stunts because modern age has tons and tons of stunts. Cthulhu Awakens has a couple of more tightly curated stunt tables. However, one of the things is you can always decide, no, I want all the modern age stunts, and you can just have them. Game works fine with them,
yeah, yeah. Gotcha.
right? The same is like, if you want to, I want to play an elf from the Modern Age Companion and have a, urban fantasy mythos game. That's also perfectly doable. And it would require pretty much no adaptation.
Right, right. Yeah, and, and Blue, you bring up I can call you Blue, right? We're friends. Blue mentions that a lot of people can't afford to get that GM screen with every new product. So yeah, it definitely understood. And hey, wait, I've got some new art. Another piece. Uh, what is happening here?
Oh, that's Nyarlathotep.
I'm sorry, say that again.
Don't make me say it again. I'm never sure if I'm pronouncing that name properly.
Chad is going to, of course, probably hit.
That's another mythos deity. That's the old crawling chaos,
Okay.
or at least one manifestation of it.
Is that an eye, a mouth?
Oh,
Uh,
it's a three-lobed eye.
oh, okay. Oh, gotcha,
So
gotcha.
that's
So
one of
sort
the
of like,
things associated with that mythos deity, right?
I see, I see. So is that like kind of borrowed from goats? Don't they have kind of
That
the,
has to do. Okay, so that is also a thing associated with that deity, and is also associated with the fact that Nyarlathotep is associated with like medieval witchcraft, medieval supposedly satanic witchcraft, and all of that stuff, right? Um,
yeah, yeah.
so
Also
there's strains of
associated with
that
leg
and
day.
strains of ancient Egypt, and
It's a
and and
beautiful piece of
indeed,
work.
and indeed, the outsider is thick.
Thick. Yeah, absolutely. I'm mesmerized, but
Yeah.
I will admit something here on this program, just because we're surrounded by friends. Everybody knows everybody. I feel like I can trust everyone. I've always wanted hooves. I just want hooves. Is that weird? Like,
I
what do you
think
do
there's
with
some
toes?
specialty shoe people who can help you with that.
You think so?
But if you get
Craft
hoof
me my.
shoes, do the hoof shoes need shoes?
See, these are all good questions, and I just don't know enough hoofed people. Hoofed,
Yeah,
hooved,
well,
behooved.
yeah.
But yeah. So if anybody watching happens to be like I'm not going to commit a whole lifestyle to it. I'm not going to be a hoofy, but I definitely yeah. John says that's doable. That is definitely street level fighter thick. Street fighter level thick.
uh,
um,
you know
so
what?
squatting chaos they of the
Yeah.
quadriceps.
I
Go ahead,
I
please.
found I randomly found the Street Fighter 2 movie the other day, and that just has a banger of a soundtrack of
Oh
like
yeah.
of of 90s, like it's all 90s industrial music. It's got like like there's like Chun-Li fighting, who was the Spanish ninja in Street Fighter? I forget his name.
El Ninja.
Well, I'm not
That
going to
wasn't it.
call that a
That was not
strong
it.
effort, Troy.
I know I pulled that one
But it
right
was an
in.
effort. But yeah, they're fighting, and all of a sudden this KMFDM song, yeah, Vega, yeah, comes up, and I was just absorbed by it. And then I had it working in the background. See that? You said a lot of glowing things about the process, Troy, but like
Yeah,
in practice, the process is me frowning at a screen and typing while retro anime plays in the background.
right. Well, and that is because your brain
So
is so big that it needs, you need to be like, okay, this part of the brain, you're gonna, you know, go, get your fix of '90s industrial dance music,
yes.
and while the other part of the brain
Mhm.
is, busy putting worlds and knitting worlds together, and creating opportunities for us to see. What was it? Thessalonia. TB Hooves. What was his name? Their name, sorry. The
What?
hooved the hooved
Oh,
creature.
oh,
The hooved
Nyarlathotep.
Narolopicus. Yeah,
Sure.
love. Sure, yeah. I mean, I can see the word
Well,
coming out of your mouth, and it seems difficult,
well,
but
I
looks
mean,
remarkable.
it's it's a fake Egyptian version of a fake. It's a fake Greek transliteration of a fake Egyptian name. So there's a lot of room to, uh, in a language that nobody knows how to really pronounce anymore. So there's a lot of room to move around and be flexible when it comes to
Well,
pronouncing
I
these.
mean, yeah, it's pronounced Nyarlathotep. Nyarlathotep. Is that it? That's not even
Well, or
close, is it?
dialect Hotep, right? Well, Hotep is identifiable, but the rest of it, I came up with like Awakens does have like a false, authentic Egyptology sort of origin for that name, because we just kind of tried to bump up the ring of truth a little bit, and that's required a couple of things. Like, I have to make a decision because there's like one thing where in the source material there's like this Egyptian character, and the dynasty in the source material is wrong. So I have to figure out whether to fix the dynasty or keep the wrong dynasty and come up with another. Like, it's it's a lot of these little detail questions. Like, I had a discussion with an author about when espresso machines were available in the United States because that came up in something. Uh, you know and that's a lot of what development is. It's those little bells and whistles and doing the research, right? Because your job as developer is to make the extra effort
Yeah.
if you don't think it's quite present, right? um, and that's not to say that the writers aren't doing their jobs, but your job is you're the second pair of eyes who can look at something and go, oh, that is so cool, it deserves to be more prominent. Or, oh, maybe we can cut some of this because I can tell that the writer was just warming up when they were writing it, right? Or that they got lost about what they were going to talk about. Because that's
Yeah.
one of the things about writing. And I guess, we're running a little late. And if I'm going to end on something, it'll be this. Uh, when you look at the work of writers before they're edited, a lot of what you see um, is not so much what they're trying to communicate as what they're going through at the time they're writing. So often when you read an introduction to something will often be a little long, and that's because the writer is composing their thoughts, right? They're going, oh, how am I going to talk about this thing? Oh, I'll start by going, oh, in the dark and sinister universe, there are dark and sinister people doing dark and sinister things. Oh, they're so terribly dark and sinister. And now I figured out what I'm going to say, and I'm going to go to the next section and be more specific, right?
Yeah.
So, as the developer, I'll go, well, maybe we'll just cut a couple of the dark and sinisters, right? Because that's just the writer warming up, right? And that's okay. But It's not information that needs to go to the reader. Um, and on in other situations, you'll have something where the writer is obviously stuck and they are writing out their process to get unstuck. So your job as a developmental editor, doing development, is to, you know, shorten that bit, right? Because what the writer really wanted to do was get to their solution, right? The part
Right.
where they're coming to the solution is not important, right? And we can cut that down often, or find something more useful to put in its place, right? So an example would be, I find when I'm doing powers, I will tend, for like creatures and stuff, I tend to overwrite in the first go because I'm trying to figure out what this cool thing does, right? I'm trying to figure out the rules for it, and I'm writing while I'm figuring it out. So what I have to come back and do later is take out the bits where I'm figuring it out. So I would say that for those of you doing your own creative work at home, look for signs of your process in your rhythm that you don't need to communicate to the reader. And if you shorten those, then it will make your stuff be a lot cleaner and smoother.
And more relative. I like this, but I as I often do when we get together, I think about it, it is though I envision sort of this, you're like a traffic cop. Yeah, I wish there was a better. You're a guide. You're moving this creative energy from one place to the other. You're recognizing the validity and the importance of the piece that you are that you're recognizing, that isn't necessarily something that needs to get to the player or the reader, but
Mm-hmm.
is a necessity for the creative endeavor to
That's
get
right.
to the. I love that. I absolutely love that. And that to me, I feel like I think you are a designer's designer. To be able to sort of say, I see that for what it is, and it is important. But when we're looking at creating the space that will allow people to impart their own creativity as they're building their own world and their campaigns and around the table, that is a very interesting. I will say this, Malcolm. I don't know that I've ever met anybody that has this depth of sort of, you're kind of moving in between these spaces, you know, trimming a bit here, visiting this here, connecting that pipe to this one, putting this, that back in the oven or whatever, to cure some more. But it's really fascinating. It is, why it's always a joy to have you on the program. And we did start 2 minutes late.
You
That was,
know what? To make it a
yeah,
little less like all up in our own very
flatulent.
private spaces
Mhm.
about talking about this, it applies just as much to doing your own, your own
Praxis.
running your own games,
Yeah,
or even
yeah,
developing your personal PC. Because when you're doing that kind of stuff, you will go through the same thing. I find when people do adventures, that's where excessive cliche comes in, right? When people are running adventures, they'll kind of have these speed bumps, right? Often they'll be like combat encounters and things like that. And those speed bumps exist so that the GM can think about exactly how they're going to manage what comes next, right? So
yeah,
that's
yeah.
always something when you're working on your own adventures, even if it's just for the enjoyment of your own group,
You
is
know,
when you do that outline, think about what you're putting in just to give yourself time and see if there's another way it can be managed.
so there's a
And
couple
usually that
things.
involves going to the characters.
There's a couple things. One, that I realize often, that you pop into this headspace of sharing the tools to do this work because you want other people to do the work.
I do.
Like you really want to spread that knowledge, that understanding, and unlock that piece. And when we look at systems in our world, We can point to many systemic failures. Just social codes and things, and even aspects of government, whether you're in Canada or the United States, that the process begets bad product. Like it just doesn't allow for the good thing that you're intending to
Yeah,
try to do.
yeah,
and
and
and this is a fascinating piece, because you really are talking about, you're setting this up so that people can take a piece of that inspiration and freedom to move with the bounds of the genre, and then just letting them do that thing, and it starts at the beginning of the actual
mhm.
process.
Well, that's the thing. I do think it's important both, for people to, from the perspective of players and GMs, and if you're actually going to do game writing, right, to have an open discussion of what these technical things are, right? Like, like one of the things I often say is that if you want to be good, you should be able to do 2,000 half decent words a day. Some
Now,
people
define half
need,
decent. Like, just as an exercise, you read them and you're not screaming into the night.
yeah, well, they are something. They're 2,000 words that you think you deserve to be paid for.
Okay, there we go. That's
if
a good
I
metric. No, I get that.
if it's in an arrangement where somebody's going to pay you, right? And here's the thing: it's not a lot of the things I'm saying. They're not original. They're not unique to me. They're known, and there will be private conversations about them. But of course, you end up with a lot of structural issues where this information isn't getting to all the people it could get to, right?
Sure. Yeah.
So I'm talking about things that a lot of the time they're being talked about in private social media groups. Um, when I was coming up, there was a private IRC channel
I
that
agree,
I was
David.
part
Yeah.
of. When Yeah, I mean they're happening at the Gen Con convention bars. You know,
They're being
they're happening
debated
in
in,
all
in
of
sort
these
of
spaces.
rarefied spaces. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, they're happening in all these spaces that are not always the easiest to get to, and mean sometimes you have to know a person that knows a person and things like that. And the worst thing is when somebody who doesn't have access to any of this information um, bets it all on doing the best they can, but just not knowing how to
Right.
bring it
Right.
forward that step or how to keep pace with some of the technical demands. Um, and it shouldn't be a secret, you know.
I
Uh,
agree with you. I agree with you. And the whole notion that gatekeeping preserves status is just it's a fallacy. It's not the way you grow as a person, by keeping things away from other people. And a world where we are inspiring people to do great work, uh, you people remember that, and it just creates community. It creates, I mean, I do think that is one of the many, many things that is amazing about you, Malcolm. I
well,
always enjoy it. And we are going to put just a tiny bit of
mhm.
pressure. I don't want to like commit you to anything, but folks want to and need to have more opportunities to engage with you, because I've even seen, as you're engaging with creatives or people who want to be creative, first you just treat them as though, yeah, you got it, you got this. It's just a presumption, and that's a special thing. But the other
Well, they
piece
don't.
is, go ahead.
I mean, they don't usually get to me unless they're that good. I mean, there's not. I'm not. Well, when how
I
do I
listen.
how do I put this? I'm trying to find a nice way to put this.
I
At
know
the end of the day,
you're
I
also
have
you're
to
trying to duck
I
a
have to make a
compliment.
good book show up,
You
right?
do, yeah.
And I can't. And there's only a limited amount of guidance that I can provide. I need people to know this stuff so that they can help me make good books, right?
Right.
And not just so that they have knowledge, but also so I have access to their knowledge, right? So I have
Yeah.
access to their perspectives and their creativity and what they're going to bring. I need them to know how to bring it.
Yeah.
With you know, it doesn't mean it doesn't mean that they don't know how do I put this? I need to find a way to build a bridge so that anything they have to tell me, they can do it in a way that I understand, right?
Sure.
And for the purposes of this, I try to put myself in the shoes of a broad-minded but not necessarily deep reader, right? And that's not because I think that my audience are dumb, but I do think that my audience want to read something on several levels, right? So they want to
Yeah.
be able to enjoy it with a service reading, but then they want to be able to dig into it in play or in prep and things like that. So all of that needs to be expressed, right? But the content of it is the creative stuff coming from the other person's mind. So I don't know.
But
Does
that's the
that
other
make
part of
sense?
this too. It absolutely makes sense because what you're talking about is growing the art, the craft, and but you're lending a practical, like you said it. Not half bad is, can you sell it?
Yeah.
Is it something that you will get coins for? And here's the thing. Now you've been doing this. Folks may not know this, but you are 75 years old.
Yes.
And the reason you look so youthful is because you extract the youth from people that are listening. So everybody, look in the mirror, you will see that you've lost 10 years.
Mm.
And Malcolm looks 18. Really, I mean, honestly, you don't do that,
That
but
would
you
require
do.
a much longer show, Troy.
It would, I know. Yeah, absolutely. And incantations and the whole thing.
Yes.
See you, Blue. Thank you so much for stopping by. So glad you enjoyed it. We were happy to have you. But I do know that, so here's the deal. Someone with your talent, I mean, you just bring down the mega bucks. And here's your home right here. Wow, that is impressive. Like the very definition. What are we looking at here?
Um, well, I wanted a place that would keep cool in the summer, but this really overdid it.
Yeah, it seems.
Uh,
Yeah, yeah. It's
um,
definitely those
yeah, that
steps.
is. We have the settings got a lot of ancient alien ruins, right?
Oh, nice. Of
So
course. Yeah.
obviously, Brandon is right. It is meant to be evocative of the Mountains of Madness, but it is not necessarily that place.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
Try to.
All right. You listen, Malcolm. I've got to say thank you so much for hanging out. And you know what? I could have pulled a trick and ask a couple questions and kept having this conversation. But that's just we should do this more often.
We
And
should.
yeah, absolutely. And people enjoy it. I really enjoy it. So it's for me a wonderful experience just to kind of get into the mind of someone who's really out there, with a commitment to practical
Um,
application
I'm
of
sorry
some
that
pretty real
my
talent.
things were a little on the abstract side.
Not at all.
I did
I
try to
mean,
talk
yeah,
about specific stuff.
a
I,
little
I've got a
bit.
specific thing. I'm
Yeah.
doing. I've been going over. I've been going over a draft PDF of the second edition of Fantasy Age.
Oh,
So that's got some cool stuff, and I have some articles that are going to be dropping on the website with previews of the new edition. Because I did a little bit of work on it. So, the actual development duties have passed from Owen to Ian. So that's happening.
nice.
We're
Well, you
close.
have your new album that's dropping. Here's the song from it. Let's listen.
Oh, yes.
Oh, yeah. I feel like it's giving very lobby of the W.
Mm-hmm.
Listen, Malcolm, always a pleasure, absolutely a pleasure. And I know you come away thinking, oh gosh, did I I was too abstract. You were just chef's kiss, perfect, everything we ever wanted and more. And we'll do this again. We're I'm gonna pull out a little calendar and you and I will look and see when we can get you on here in a more regular basis, because we talked about a ton of stuff and the design intent behind the process. We showed some art and all that good stuff, and it's just the tip of the iceberg. I like this.
Well, now
This is what
we gotta go.
Yeah, we gotta go. Nyarlathotep. I mean, I should probably figure out a way to say it so I don't sound like I'm having a stroke actively on the stream. But hey, chat. Listen, friends, we really appreciate your love, your support, your great questions, and do me a favor, make sure that you're subscribed, make sure that you are, wherever you are, if there are thumbs, if there are stars, whatever their measure of amazing, we love you-ness is, give it all to us. Make sure that
shout out
yeah.
to DB, Mr. Bolak there, who is probably actually seeing me for the first time in color forever.
What are you talking about? Are you talking about David?
David Bolak, who I know from very back in the day. So
nice, David. Well, glad you're able to kind of hang out, and yeah, absolutely. And hitting all the appreciation buttons. Thank you, Duke. And Stan, thank you for thanking us, and you are also welcome.
You, Stan.
Hey, with that, I say unto you all, don't forget, we've got Mutants and Masterminds Monday, and conveniently named because it happens on Monday. And we just so happen to do it at 2 p.m. Pacific, 5 p.m. Eastern, and we have a lot of fun there. It is a blast. It gets a little wild. But yeah, we've got much more age-related stuff because we've got, what's that thing called? Is it called Fifth Season? That's a thing, isn't it? The Fifth Season RPG.
So I have heard. It is not something I have worked on, but it looks pretty cool.
I gotta tell you, it's a delight. I also gotta make sure that I'm not sharing my
character working on it.
Oh, look at this. Oh, we're not gonna go quite yet. Honestly, truly, I mean, I don't believe that he is made of human stuff. Something about Steve Kenson is just...
Yeah. Oh, my goodness.
Yeah. I got to share this on our way out the door because, every once in a while we get a little, the Stan shines the Stan signal in the sky. And let me get to this. Sharing the screen and... All right, where you be? Oh, whoops. Window and... Where the heck is it? One moment. But yeah, so our audience is just chock full of talent, and we're very lucky. But did you know, friends, the Age Creators Alliance allows you to actually develop and publish your own stuff?
Yes.
I mean, that's incredible. And these moments where you get to kind of hang out and listen to, kind of mastercraft work means you can also be, pulling down the same, oh, this is so good.
And the guidelines are being revised.
We are, yes.
Yeah.
Hey, I want to let everybody, I know it's Funky Age. I also want to let people know that, isn't that great?
Prince.
There it is. Hey, when people play, when they see the new, the juicier, more generous agreement, licensing for the Age Creators Alliance, do take key note that Malcolm was a big part of making that. Not that anybody was like, no, we want to make this as awful as possible. But you really were fighting hard. Not, you really were standing up and saying, hey, we should do this stuff. And I appreciate that. So when you see it, make sure you send love to Malcolm
Yeah.
directly.
Well, I mean, the Age Creators line specifically is more your thing.
It is indeed,
in
but
terms of getting it done. But thank you.
Yeah, I would 100% not be as well versed as I am were it not for you. So, and with that, I'm going to say thank you. And before you can try to say something that will blunt, you can't do it. You got to accept the compliment. You got to stew in it. Hey, friends, have a great rest of your week. We will talk on Monday, and then we've got ThursdAGE coming up. And if you got any thoughts or ideas, send a note to Let's Play at greenronin.com, and we will summarily ignore it. Everybody have happy Thursday. Talk to you soon. Goodbye.